Good morning, good afternoon, IOST community. This is another episode of the IOST Podcast by Sutler Ventures. Mike got up to go do whatever Mike was doing. I'm here with Dimitri. Dimitri, how are we doing?
Hello, I'm doing great.
Doing great. You're
Plugging in my phone.
Oh, okay. Well, welcome back. What do you have to say to the community?
I feel like shit.
Oh,
I don't feel good today.
Yeah,
but
we're
gonna make it through.
Yeah, we're not setting a high bar for how good our podcast is going to be, but you know what? I think we can exceed last week's.
Yeah, you want to know why?
Why?
Because I screwed it up. It was my fault. I apologize. Something was not plugged in, so the audio you heard last week was from the camera, not from the mics.
Yeah, we stopped the podcast at the end of last week's episode and realized that the mics weren't actually plugged in, at least for the 30 minutes that we were talking together. So That was great. That's
because I wasn't here.
Yeah. How we doing? Dima, how you doing? You were in New Jersey giving the hot takes?
Yeah, thanks for bringing me out of the dungeon, to be back on this podcast. I'm happy to be back and given another chance, to share some info with you guys.
Nice. Well, we have a great episode this week. We actually have to get to something before we start the episode, though. The 20K IOST winner did not respond to the team. So Stringer Bell, I don't know what it was. We hit up Telegram, we hit up YouTube. That's basically the only ways we could get in touch with you guys. So we're going to have to choose another winner. So by the time this episode drops, we should have picked another winner, and that should be in Telegram and Twitter. So Stringer, come on, man. What's up? I got to go through, what do we got to do?
Dropping the ball, man. I don't know.
20K IOST, what is that?
Math. Yeah.
Math is hard. $200+
Yeah.
Damn. What?
$225, something like that.
Maybe we'll give him a consolation. Maybe I'll throw him some 5K IOST. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Throw him some play tokens.
Yeah. Oh, I don't.
IOST play.
Yeah, maybe. So we got a ton of stuff to cover this week. We've got the Q2 contribution rewards date and info that we want to hit you guys with. That's coming up very shortly. We have Jimmy's tweet about generally where IOST is going within the next 6 months, and we'll touch on a couple things there. We have the bi-weekly report, which touches on the social media statistics and the mainnet statistics. We have an IOSTDEX, or one of the first iterations, coming from the IOST Win team. We have the Origo Network that Dima is going to talk about, as well as Dimitri's desk. I think we had a couple comments from the community too about Libra.
Yeah,
maybe we'll talk about Libra since it's such a big piece of news, for today.
Piece of something.
How are you guys? So you guys are feeling up to this? We're going to start this podcast.
Yeah, we're a little under the weather if you couldn't tell, but we're gonna make it through because this is important.
Awesome. Perfect. All right, so we'll start with the Q2 contribution rewards date and info. We have the information here. So last Q1 contribution rewards, the timelines went like this. April 1st through April 7th, the submissions were open for Q1 node and contribution reports. April 8th through April 15th, the report assessment and rankings by the IOST team and the ICAC team. April 15th through the April 20th, it was initial rankings released. Dispute period for nodes open. That was the time when they felt maybe if they got tier 2 and they wanted to be tier 1, they could dispute that. April 22nd, the dispute period closed, and April 24th, the final rankings and the rewards were passed out. So if you're following those timelines, that's what we should look like for July, correct?
Yep. Yeah, I would assume that they're not going to drastically change this, right? So it's going to be a few weeks until you officially get your votes, but like you said, those are the reasons why. So, IOST is now counting essentially 91 days worth of contribution versus the Q1 amount was only 22 days. So you're going to get significantly more rewards than you did in the first, kind of quarterly period. But, again, that there's got to be time for everybody to submit. There's got to be time for review. I think it's really cool that they have that dispute period there as well, so that it's not just kind of like, okay, final handing down of rewards and there's nothing anybody can do about it. So, whether it's July 24th or 25th or whatever, it will be towards the end of the month, third, fourth week, something like that.
It would be interesting to see if anyone actually disputed and won their dispute in Q1. That might be something we need to check out.
Yeah, and generally, or at least the way they did it last quarter, was the day after the rewards went out, there was a big ICAC meeting with all of the nodes where everybody kind of talked about it and had questions and all this. So looking forward to jumping on that again, and we'll obviously report back here with what's talked about.
Awesome. All right, so we'll get into the meat of the episode here. We're going to start, I guess we're not going to start with, actually, let's do it. What do you guys think about Facebook's release of the Libra white paper?
Actually, I didn't get a chance to really dive deep into it since it just came out.
Just generally.
But generally, I mean, hey, we kind of saw this coming. The interesting thing that I picked up from it, just knowing from the top, that it's actually going to be attached to stable coins. It's going to be a basket, so it's going to be essentially, it's not something that's going to be volatile like other tokens, or you can speculate on it. It's essentially just a way for them to have a payment system, that they can use within the app itself. So it can actually be like a big publicity stunt as well. Essentially, it really, I think, in my opinion, benefits really like the other crypto projects or Bitcoin itself.
Yeah. I think I would agree with that. And the general consensus, because there was a lot
general consensus.
General consensus is that, what is that, like a synonym? What?
No, consensus, blockchain consensus. Get it?
Okay.
Yeah,
well, all right.
My
perfect.
bad. Continue.
Yeah. Okay. So the general consensus, at least on my Twitter feed, which felt like everyone on my Twitter feed was talking about Libra this morning, is that it's a positive for crypto. Maybe not for projects that were doing what Facebook is going to want to be doing, which is like global payments. And, listen, when I first heard about this, it was mainly, the main thought I had was that all this talk that we've had about Bitcoin and it being a store of value for people in countries, across the world, it makes more sense actually for those people to have a store of value that's stable as opposed to, having a store of value that might be,
right,
down 80%, up 90%, things like that.
Yeah, there's so many key points on this. I mean, I think we could probably do a whole podcast on Libra, right? There's so many points. I mean, the piece you bring up there is an interesting one because it does allow people who basically have a smartphone and who are connected through Facebook to now transact money, whereas obviously that's been a big issue for a lot of people. I mean, it's something like 30 or 32% of people are banked, right? The rest are not unbanked is something I saw this morning. So that's from Libra, right? So, kind of take it with a grain of salt there. But, there are so many interesting pieces, like just touching on a couple. I saw that as soon as the white paper and website launched, I think it was the Central Bank of France came out and said that they're demanding a review of the currency. Because, from a central bank standpoint, this is a new payment rail that's now controlled by a conglomerate of corporations, right? Obviously, Facebook as kind of the head honcho, but, you've got PayPal and all these others, many of whom are U.S. based, right? So it threatens the traditional payment rails or traditional currencies of other countries. France was the one that kind of stuck their neck out or raised their hand on this, but I would imagine we're going to get more and more of that as we go. I don't necessarily love Libra because I think it kind of takes a lot of the blockchain or cryptocurrency hype and markets that, but wraps it up in something that's very centralized and doesn't necessarily bring with it all of the the great kind of beauties of decentralization or of crypto. I mean, for example, Facebook and Libra basically hold all of the private keys, so from that standpoint, it's not really any different than a PayPal or a Venmo. They're going to be able to, seize funds or cancel accounts or these things. But net, per your point, and as we saw basically all day on Twitter today, that I think it will act as an on-ramp or an off-ramp for people into crypto in general.
Yeah. And not just like a physical on and off ramp for finance, but knowledge as well.
Exactly.
People, it kind of reminds me. I know Dima doesn't watch Game of Thrones, so you guys can get on him for that.
What do you mean?
Do you
I
watch
finished
Game
the
of-
whole thing.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, from start to finish?
Yeah.
Okay, well, never mind. I just never watched it with you. I'm sorry. But this feels like, because it's always felt like the crypto community, blockchain community is like fighting these big traditional companies, these big traditional entities. It feels like that scene where Tyrion has Oberyn come in and kind of that trial by combat where he's like, I'll fight for you. That's kind of what Facebook is doing, like indirectly. I don't think they meant to do it, but right now they're kind of taking up the mantle. And whether we like it or not, they're taking up the mantle as most known blockchain company, in the world. And they're now going to be fighting with all these traditional companies and governments.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool.
I think a big repercussion of this is that privacy is gonna be giant in the next 2 to 3 or 2 to 4 years. At this point, I don't think Facebook has the confidence that they can't screw this up. I mean, they weren't really able to not screw up Facebook, as when you think about data and you think about privacy and all these various things. I mean, I was talking to one of the IOST team members about this late last night, and they were trying to get some insight on kind of Facebook in the U.S. and the brand, especially within crypto, has been hurt quite a bit because of the privacy and the data concerns. So you come out, you're taking this new cryptocurrency to billions of new people, and that will do great things. But end of the day, long term, I think they're still going to run into a lot of the same issues that they have with just Facebook, the social network.
Yeah, but I mean, there's the same team behind it, so that makes sense. Okay. I'm so sorry for calling you out on Game of Thrones, but did you have anything else on Libra? I know we're like 5 minutes into the podcast, or at least the heart of the podcast, and we haven't talked about IOST yet. So
just to kind of wrap it up, the last thing that I want to mention is that Bitcoin, can be used to essentially avoid these situations that I talk about in countries where capital gets restricted in terms of movement out of the country. Where it would be interesting to see how when Libra is there, how I think Facebook will be forced to comply and essentially comply with these restrictions in countries. So basically, I don't think Libra will be used in a way that Bitcoin is used in terms of actually, moving your capital and avoiding these restrictions that countries have to keep those people like as a hostage when their inflation in their country is going crazy. I think because of, essentially how many companies are behind Facebook, like, you have Visa, PayPal, you mentioned, they will have to be, play ball with the regulators, and they're not going to allow things like that where, you can use it as a utility to really move capital out of the country.
That's a great point. Absolutely great point. All right, so we'll get into this Jimmy Zhong tweet that we wanted to start off the episode with. This is right from Jimmy. It says, "Big plan is coming up for IOST. In the next 6 months, we will present some very cool utility use cases for IOST." And then he goes on to say, "In the same time, the blockchain development company that partners with the IOST Foundation has become profitable. We have initiated a buyback program for IOST, and we will start soon." So starting off with the big one there at the tail end, the buyback program. That's all. Well, maybe it's the small thing, to be honest, in the long-term vision of this. But a buyback is always something nice that investors like to hear about. So that was a pretty cool announcement there.
Yeah, and they obviously talked about it before. It sounds like it hasn't started yet, and it will start soon. I think they're probably going to build it into a larger marketing plan, as it sounds like. A couple interesting things here. Talking about the private blockchain development company that is in charge of development and marketing of IOST, right? Essentially, this is kind of your legal talk that you hear from a lot of blockchain projects, where again, there's a separation that has to exist between the blockchain and the team or the project that's developing the blockchain, right? You see the same thing with EOST, right, with Block 1 and then the actual EOST software. So it kind of comes off as confusing a little bit there, but that's what he's referring to. And then obviously you have that group, right, basically IOST, partnering with the IOST Foundation, which is, ICAC. So, kind of looping it all together, there's this private blockchain development company, i.e. IOST, has become profitable, which is allowing the buyback program to start. But
gotcha.
In the first half of that kind of short thread, there's only 2 tweets. He said that there's some additional utility coming from IOST, basically to say that there's going to be more than just what we see today, essentially, right? I mean, Binance has been the one who has kind of set the bar. So I'm interested to see where we go over the next 3 to 6 months based on that.
Yeah, I want to get your guys' kind of guesses, as far educated guesses as far as what you see in the next 6 months. But what do you think about the buyback program, Dima?
I mean, it's great. Like you said, investors, like to see something like this. And like Mike said, they did talk about it. Interesting thing is that, I had like a couple people on Telegram would hit me up and be like, hey, do you think Jimmy's going to announce like when he's going to do it exactly? And I'm like, really? Like, yeah, he's going to contact us, he's going to say, hey, I'm hitting the market buy button, get ready now, so,
get your cells ready.
But, obviously it's going to be done, way differently,
Got it. All right. So again, that first part, big plan is coming up for IOST. In the next 6 months, we will present some very cool utility use cases for IOST. What do you think he's talking about? Guesses.
Oh,
Rapid fire.
Rapid fire. Goodness. Go. I mean, payments has been one that they've focused on. I would expect to see something on the payments front. Any utility increase that allows IOST to kind of increase its staking utility, whether it's with other dApps or dApps are able to kind of utilize some of that IOST staking utility in some form, right? I would imagine the staking ecosystem grows there. DeFi is always a big one. So those are three there, kind of broad categories: payments, DeFi, staking.
You took all of them, man.
I was gonna literally take everything from Deem.
So does it make sense for IOST to do their own DEX, or is that not something that makes sense? Could they potentially? Everyone's trying, like you said, everyone's trying to copy this Binance model because it seems to be the horse that never gives up. But does it make sense for IOST like do their own DEX and have the IOST token have utility there?
I don't think they're going to do that simply because it comes down to like the wallet discussion we had last week or the week before, right? Where IOST doesn't want to kind of run everything because then you run into the problem of centralization, right? The team, the development company becomes a weak point, in kind of the chain of decentralization. So if IOST comes out with a DEX and for some reason because of political or economic or cultural something, right? Who knows, right?
Yeah.
Whatever that issue is, now the DEX has to be shut down. It's a giant problem for the other players in the ecosystem. So
got it.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I know.
Yeah,
he
took
all
pretty
of
much
it.
took all of it.
Nothing.
I agree.
Awesome. So we'll get to the next little topic here that we've got. We've got the biweekly report, the social media and mainnet statistics from that report from the IOST team. So what do we got?
Yep. So we like to keep you guys updated on this every week. It looks like Twitter is up a good bit, up about 2,000 followers on Twitter. Medium relatively the same. Telegram is up about 3,400, 3,500 folks. Reddit, let's see, Reddit's up a few hundred, and then Korea Facebook and Korea Kakao, which they throw in there as well, from a social media standpoint, is about the same. Mainnet statistics, over 71 million transactions now, a total of 218 contracts deployed on IOST, 324,000 plus accounts, block height of over 21 million, and now 27 dApps launched on IOST.
That's big. That's a big number of dApps there. I remember like maybe even 4 weeks ago, and that said 12.
But yeah, I mean, if you look through the rest of the biweekly report here, it seems like we're headed in a good direction. And there were some other kind of concerns and whatnot that came through the community this week. There was one like the team page has been changed and the website's been updated, and there seems to be kind of like a shift happening with IOST. So we were talking about it on Reddit, team page in particular, updating you guys. So talk to the IOST team about it. I know there were some concerns about like what's going on with the team if the team page was taken down. Talking to them, they basically said it was something that they should have talked about with the community before that they changed it, right? CZ does a great job of this where, say, for example, Binance is going to be moving Bitcoin, a significant amount of Bitcoin from one cold wallet to another. He'll always go out and say, hey, we're going to be moving $400 million worth of Bitcoin, right? This doesn't mean we're getting hacked, right? That's always a concern with an exchange is when you have like one of those bots say like, oh, Binance moved, 400 million Bitcoin from a cold wallet to a hot wallet. It's like, oh shit, well, what does that mean? Is Binance hacked? Right? So same thing with a project. If the team page starts getting changed, or maybe the investor page gets changed, or something like this, it kind of spurs that concern as to say like, okay, well, is something bad happening? Right? Which is fair. And the community is very demanding from that front, but there's no sort of disaster happening behind the scenes. Basically what IOST is trying to do from a branding standpoint is shift a little bit away from what their focus has been on founders and co-founders. That's not to say that any of the founders or co-founders are departing the project or anything like that, but they've built the brand and they've built the business focused on these co-founders, right? And these founders, Jimmy, Ray, the whole team, who are obviously, incredibly skilled at what they do. They've got strong experience in business, Jimmy having, sold companies before. But at the end of the day, with where the market is now, people seem to really be paying attention to kind of the institutionalization of crypto, or the, kind of a corporate feel of crypto. So, this team member told me basically that that's what they're looking to do with the new team page, is kind of give it a more of a corporate feel, so that it's not just 720 somethings running the protocol, which obviously it's well past that, right? They're the ones who have launched that. Now there's many block producers, many of whom are venture funds or exchanges, or groups like us. There's a lot more to it than obviously just the founders. So there's a kind of a branding change going on there, and then it seems like the team page is one that's kind of fallen behind. It was essentially set up about a little over a year ago, and hadn't really had any changes. So some of the kind of lower level members of IOST have moved on, kind of moved up the ladder within crypto to other opportunities or whatnot. But I know that was kind of a big concern in the community we saw on Reddit. So just touching on that, it makes sense that we kind of got, this tweet from Jimmy about, hey, what's coming next? We saw the website change a little bit. You can now see dApps Explorers on there, but it sounds like a new team page is going to be coming.
Yeah, and roadmap, same thing, right?
Okay, yeah,
so
a
lot of community members were asking about that as well. And again, kind of bouncing off the same topic that you were saying, is that post the mainnet launch, they have essentially been hitting all the roadmap marks, right? So in terms of like, here's the mainnet, we have a plan to release all these dApps, who plan to do integrations and so on. And they've been outperforming on that end. So eventually, the roadmap becomes essentially outdated, and then the project is moving, let's say outside of expectations in a positive direction, where a new roadmap has to be created. And that's something that they're doing right now. So they're putting that together to essentially accommodate the new opportunities that IOST is facing right now, that they might not known before when the original roadmap was created. So you can see the activity in IOST. dApps are being created, integrations are happening. That is the main thing, really. The fact that they don't have a roadmap yet, they're gonna get that out.
Yeah, I think it's super important, especially, and one thing we like to do on this podcast is be super transparent about what we're talking about. We're not here to have an echo chamber of sorts. If you don't address the issues and say that they're actual issues, then they won't actually get solved. So just us sitting up here and talking about what's good about. Wow.
My bad.
I was in the middle of one of the best speeches I've ever made on this podcast, and you're going to drop that. Okay.
I dropped
All right.
that.
Anyways, so we want to address the problems. I'm not here to, certainly we're here to talk about the good things about IOST, but we always want to, be talking about what things that IOST can improve on as well. And that goes for the team as well.
Yeah, Dev. I mean, it was good to hear from this team member that, they basically saw this issue, they saw the concern, and were like, shit, we definitely should have said something about this before we changed it. We get that, right? But I would expect that over the next weeks, if we'll at least see a new team page, or we'll at least get kind of some mention of it from the team. It sounded like that was important, and that's obviously our goal, right? I would imagine that a lot of you guys out there, a lot of this audience is US based, or maybe you're in North America broadly, or in Europe or whatnot, right? Kind of generally English speaking. there can be a gap as far as communication goes between Asia and the West. So, we had a fantastic conversation with the team last night, and are really looking forward to bringing that news out to you guys first. As one of the first folks who can bring that to you, making sure that the team is not just communicating within inside their hometown, within inside Asia, within kind of within that home field, right? But they're understanding this is a global community. So it's one of those things. Like you said, it's important that we address the concerns. In this case, like I said, I think it's one of those things that just was a mistake on the part of IOST.
Yeah, I agree with that. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna move into Dimitri's desk. We shot a new intro, so hopefully this is very entertaining for you guys. We're looking to do this weekly. It'll be its own series as well as something we put in this podcast, like I talked about last week. What do you think? What do you think, Dima? It's your desk. You talk about it.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. It's been working out pretty well. I love talking about volatility and price action, especially if I can pass along some of my experience working with some of the indicators from FX. I love doing that as well. And, essentially show the relationship, how it interacts with crypto. So hopefully you guys like it and you enjoy it.
Let's get into the segment.
Welcome back, guys, to another TA session where we take a look at price action and what has happened in the market for the past week. As always, we're going to jump in straight into IOST USD on a daily chart. As you can see, our range levels are still outlined here, and we can see that we had a little bit of a bounce from that bottom of the range since the last time we recorded our podcast. So last time we recorded our podcast, the price was around 1096, and we actually wicked all the way up to 1335, which is a little bit over 20% in terms of price action. Interesting to know that, of course, there was some fundamental news that came out that we covered on the podcast that has probably caused this price action, but it is still important to keep in mind that we're still keeping this range here. As you can see, ADX is still below 20, which signifies that we're still contained within that range. Interesting to know that ATR, which is our volatility measurement, has been going down. So you can see quite a bit of price consolidation within this range that's been happening. We are still around that 50-day moving average. It'll be interesting to see how we play this out. Keep in mind that overall this range between these two levels is about 40%. We did have that push in a wick of 20%. So I'll be watching that very closely. As you can see, the volume has been steady. We've been still on that rise for the volume. And it'll be interesting to see how the rest of this range plays out if we essentially go back up to 1437, or if we're going to consolidate and move back to that 1096 level. As always, let's take a look at BTC USD. Interesting development here. Last time we talked about it, it was essentially way below 9K. We all know that BTC did breach that 9K level. Interesting to note that ADX actually bounced right off that 20 mark that we talked about. It was approaching. I was talking about if we're gonna dip below that, it is a possibility that we might range between certain levels before we actually pop. And I did discuss last time that it is possible that if ADX essentially bounces right off that 20, that can signify essentially another push upwards or downwards, where essentially the price action is not going to stay between the two levels. We're seeing that ADX, like I said, did bounce from 20. ATR is slowing down, even though we had this upwards movement on BTC. We're essentially approaching that important mark after 9K is the 10K, which we're probably going to look at quite a bit of price action development around that level. So it'll be very interesting to find out what's going to happen there. Also, another interesting note is that last time I covered that the volume has been kind of slowing down for BTC. That's why we talked about that range development. We did have a pickup in terms of volume for the last 3 days or so. And as always, let's talk about ETH USD. Actually, this is the wrong one. All right. And on ETH, actually, we have dipped below 20 on ADX. So, and we can see that it is a possibility that we are developing that range that we talked about. ATR is slowing down as well, so volatility is slowing down. And it is possible that we might actually see this range continue to develop. Now, of course, keep in mind that indicators are based on previous data. They are delayed. It is possible that we can essentially pop above that 20 and continue to move upwards. But in the meantime, we see that the volume has been kind of slowing down on ETH. We are seeing some red candles here at the top of the range that we have outlined, and I'll see how that develops further. Just to essentially wrap this up, interesting development in terms of dominance levels. As we can see, BTC has actually picked up quite a bit of dominance, and we are at 57.25% now. Of course, relative to everything else, that has dipped. Ethereum has dipped, the alts have dipped. So BTC really picked up dominance, and we can, of course, see that in the price action itself. Hope you guys enjoyed this segment. Let me know in the comments what you think about it. Also, let me know if you would like me to cover any other tokens that you guys are watching. I'm always interested to talk to other traders. Of course, this is never an investment advice. This is solely for information purpose only. And if you guys would like me to cover any other tokens, please drop that in the comments, and I'll be happy to do that on the next episode. All right, happy trading.
All right, so Dima just informed me that we will not be doing the intro this week because apparently you don't like your outfit?
Yeah, I gotta do my hair, do a little makeup. I have my makeup artist today, and so
you should see this guy's gel situation that
Oh
he's
my
got going on, man. It's as big as my head. But anyways, we're gonna jump into the next topic here. This is gonna be IOSTDEX. Now, this came out about 3 weeks ago when IOST Win dropped. So IOST Win came out with their mining platform. But there was a section that said IOSTDEX. Now, if you clicked on that, you were taken to what essentially was the first iteration of a DEX on IOST, but it was pretty crap, to be honest. But they've done a couple, UX UI updates, and it seems that they have some users now. So in the past, we're looking on our trusty friends dApp.com. IOSTDEX in the past 24 hours, 347 users, and about 813,000 IOST. So what do you guys think about this?
Well, there's 7 tokens on the DEX right now. There's Win, which is so it's from IOST Win, IOSTDEX, right? That's obviously that token's going to be on there. VOST, VOST, iPlay, which is from IOST Play. You got IABC, iCoin, Metnix's token, and then the Joy token. Out of these, Win has some volume. iPlay has some volume. Looks like VOST not so much. There's some good volume on Metnix. It looks like here, but obviously this is kind of the first start of a decentralized exchange for IOST. We're still waiting on dApps, right? dApps is working on a decentralized exchange for IOST. Excuse me. Whether that is being delayed because there's not enough tokens to trade. I mean, there's 7 here, right? We need a little bit more, or if it's just a development time frame thing is yet to be seen. But it's always interesting, like having seen the DEXs pop up on ETH and then obviously EOS, right? There's always kind of one of those things where it's like, which one of these might pump, right? Where are these opportunities at on these DEXs here?
Yeah, the I don't know, man. Like new DEX, I thought the same thing, and there's not much pump going on there. At least there's not enough liquidity to actually get in and out of a position very easily. So yeah, your token pumped like 200%, but if you sell one token, it's going back down. So it'll be interesting to see how that going forward, because it's essential for an ecosystem 100%. What do you think?
Yeah, I think one of the.
I was just gonna tell Dima, it sounds like this guy's got some bags on NewDex.
That needs to offload. I mean, one of the biggest challenges for new exchanges, especially DEXs, is the liquidity factor, right? Having enough liquidity to really move orders, or getting in and out. So since it's a fresh, exchange, it's normal to see something like this. I mean, you look at the charts, it's like everywhere right now, Yeah. So, I mean, as long as the technology is there and it's actually working, once things really start picking up, and the traders start using it, there's be more liquidity, they'll have more use. But it's a typical challenge for new exchanges that start out is that liquidity factor.
And this kind of ties into IUSD too, because IUSD can be implemented on this DEX, correct?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, you see that on other protocol DEXs. I imagine that's one of the next goals. I think it's biggest for the dApps, though, right? So if IOST Play comes out and you're able to go and spend IOST to earn IOST Play, it's not super hard to understand, say, the difference in price between the two tokens and what you could actually earn and then sell on a DEX like this. Just for playing gambling games or for playing, IOST Legend or whatever it is, right? It allows users to, connect the investment piece of crypto with the, the gaming or gambling piece of crypto, which we see on Tron a little bit and we see on EOS a little bit. So it's a nice kind of bridge to me for those dApps.
Awesome. Anything else?
Nope.
No? All right. Well, you said no, but we're going to turn it over to you. Origo Network. There was an announcement about a partnership with basically a security, what is it? A privacy platform?
Yeah, it's the privacy preserving platform for decentralized applications.
Are you selling me on this? What's going on?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's great. A lot of, actually, privacy has become like such a big topic now, especially, we've had some people in our community ask about it, talk about enhancement of privacy, and this is what these guys are doing. So they essentially do privacy for financial exchanges, insurance, paychecks, supply chain, personal data, fundraising, IoT, AI. So just to kind of give you an example, let's say a company wants to use a blockchain to do their like paychecks, for example, right? So but there's a lot, since it's public information, when the transactions actually happen, there's a lot of tools where you can keep track of certain funds moving into certain locations, and you can start figuring it out, all right, who's the owner or whatnot. This is something that actually prevents it from happening. So, the sender and receiver does not, essentially is not recognizable. So, for companies that are doing this, this is essentially key, right, to keep that privacy on both ends when they're doing these transactions. So, yeah, I mean, it's great to see something like this. It's an enhancement security for privacy and data. And these guys definitely, look legit, to execute this.
So you gave the enterprise example. Is this also for like retail users? Is there like a Monero aspect where if so take me through the process. Like, am I sending this to a contract and now?
Yeah.
Okay, and now it just becomes locked.
That contract essentially executes and it hides the the person who's receiving and the person who's sending. So it could be literally if I'm sending you some kind of assets, it goes through a smart contract where we're both not disclosed and
So it's like an additional layer on top of IOST essentially. Okay. I mean it seems like this is kind of the birth of IOST in an Origo type where we don't necessarily have kind of the full answers of what it's going to be yet, but it's there's kind of this whole grouping of like partnerships that I would classify as kind of your quote unquote like infrastructure for a community or for a network, for a blockchain. So whether it's stable coins or it's privacy or it's partnerships with like venture funds or education, right? Like these are all things that you need for a network or a cryptocurrency that's trying to, kind of be a one-stop shop for dApps, right? Like you have to have those boxes out there that a dApp can check if they want to. If you're solely a privacy network and dApps can't build on you, then it doesn't work, right? But if you're a dApp network and a dApp comes along and maybe it's gambling and they need privacy because of regulatory concerns in the country that these people are based in, boom, now you have a solution that other protocols don't or may not generally have.
Got it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Essentially, it's a big toolbox, that can be used for anybody who's building or thinking of building on IOST.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, so that was this week's episode. I did want to leave off with a couple things. One, I wanted to ask a question to the community, so I want you guys to think of questions really quick. I'm putting you on the spot. My question to the community, last week we talked about, or I think maybe 2 weeks ago, the question was, what can IOST do better? And you guys did a great job of responding and, telling us essentially what the team could work on. What can Sutler Ventures do? What do you want to see from us as another team on IOST? What do you want to see from Sutler Ventures? So your question, go.
I would, and just to touch on the point from last week, some of the top ones we got, the main one was the 7-day staking period.
Oh yeah.
Right. So in those YouTube comments, I would say at least half were, I hate the 7-day staking period. Can we drop it down to 3? Whenever EOS came out, it was 7-day. It was a 7-day, or excuse me, not staking, unstaking period, right? So to drop the 7-day unstaking period, where if you're currently voting for a node, it obviously takes 7 days for your tokens to unstake. It's generally a security feature, but a week is a long time in crypto. So we're going to talk to the team about that. That's on our plan to help get done, move it down to 4 days or 3 days or something like that. So we hear you. We're going to be working on it. My question is going to be around how you communicate with projects, right? Whether it's IOST or EOS or ETH or some brand new ICO or IEO, right? What's your preferred method of communicating with these projects? Do you like to hear from them via their blog? Do you like Telegram, Reddit, right? There's so many out there, Slack, Discord, and every project kind of seems to use different channels to do it. Some of that's kind of culturally based. Jesus, this sickness is just, I don't know what's going on.
We're at the end. You got through.
Made it.
You got through.
So obviously WeChat is big in Asia, right? And you've got you've got Facebook and Telegram and Reddit are big over here, but some use Discord. So anyway, my point is, right,
I'm gonna have to write all of this out.
where can IOST do better from a communication standpoint, right? Is it a huge pain in the ass to hear updates from IOST because it's just not, or from us because we're just not fitting within that channel that you typically use?
For me, actually, I want to comment on what you said in terms of lockup periods. So what was interesting for me is that the lockup period, 7 days, obviously can move down, but the benefit really is if you lock it up for a whole quarter and receive that quarterly reward, right? From what I understand, because if you move it around too much, then essentially, you're not going to reap that quarterly reward.
I agree with that.
Points. So that's something to keep in mind. Another thing that showed up in terms of comments a lot for improvements, and that's might sound kind of like overdone, but I'm still going to ask is, we're seeing all these dApps being developed. A lot of them are gambling dApps. What are the dApps that you guys want to see, on IOST, and what games you want to see? Because, people say, hey, I want to see more dApps that are not gambling. Okay, well, what kind of dApps do you want to see? That's something that would be interesting to find out.
Awesome. Yeah. All right, so we'll talk about, on the next podcast, we'll choose a couple of those comments to talk about so that we have some, discussion period there. So we appreciate all the comments. Please like and subscribe to the video as well, and we'll see you guys next week. Yeah, thanks for bearing with us. I know we're a little under the weather here, and obviously the audio on the last podcast wasn't great. So we're good. We're good today. So appreciate all you folks out there. Later.